George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Tyre Nichols, Alex Preddy, Renee Good, Abdirahman Abdi, Nicholas Gibbs, Anthony Griffin, Nuran Rizai. All these people have one thing in common. They all tragically and unjustly lost their lives at the hands of a law enforcement officer. And the list goes on and on and on. Behind each one is a family, friends, a story. A story that, in many cases, was brought to an end early due to an officer with a history of bad behavior that, if detected earlier, could have saved a life. In 2020, millions of people around the world took to the streets and demanded change. And, for a moment, it felt like a turning point, like things were actually going to be different. But now, years later, and people are still asking themselves, what has actually changed? Too often, accountability is slow, inconsistent, or out of reach entirely. And as the gap in trust between communities and law enforcement continues to grow, the question becomes, what can we, the people, do about it? Because the government doesn't seem to be any rush to fix things. Well, what if transparency didn't depend on institutions alone? And what if accountability was something that we could all take a part in? These victims are exactly why I created WatchR. WatchR is an app that, with your help, would create a publicly accessible database on the history of every individual law enforcement officer throughout their entire career. A system like this would help us identify patterns of bad behavior early, hold officers accountable consistently, and ensures that incidents don't get lost or forgotten over time. It would also help highlight officers that do their jobs properly, reinforcing trust instead of eroding it. Accountability isn't about division, it's about unity, but it's also about prevention. WatchR is about creating a system where harmful patterns are identified early, before they turn into more names on a list. Where accountability isn't delayed, but continuous. And where officers who do their jobs with integrity are recognized, not overshadowed. Because accountability doesn't weaken institutions, it strengthens them. We've seen what happens when these types of patterns go unnoticed. Derek Chauvin, the officer responsible for George Floyd's death, had multiple prior complaints and incidents that never truly reached the public in a meaningful way. When that kind of information stays hidden, opportunities for interventions are missed, and the consequences can be irreversible. WatchR is here to change that, to bring transparency to the forefront so that these patterns are visible to everyone, so that we can have these conversations earlier, and so that transparency becomes proactive instead of reactive. WatchR is about giving people a voice, helping prevent future victims, and rebuilding the trust between communities and law enforcement, not by tearing one side down, but by holding everyone to a higher standard. So I'll ask you, who watches the Watchers? Well, with a tool like WatchR, the answer is simple. We all do.